welcome you to What's What BR. Today we have Jonathan Clark, manager at LA Champagne. He is a CPA and he's here to answer some questions for us. I know everybody's got questions on individual stimulus package, what that actually means, what it actually looks like. Also, we're hearing for a bunch of employers, people are tossing the PPP, out. I believe that's the payroll protection plan, something along those lines. Jonathan, CPA, is going to be here to answer those questions for us. Kind of give us the what's what of going on from the accounting world. We're hopefully going to have him on multiple times. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hello, Brandon.
We are isolation separation. So
That's
we're
right.
bringing this to Zoom. Everybody's being safe. So tell me a little bit, how long you been over at LA Champagne?
I'm going on 12 years with LA Champagne. One little tidbit about LA Champagne. It's the oldest firm in Baton Rouge. We started in 1919. So we will be celebrating our 100-year anniversary this year. So,
wow.
Yes.
That is impressive.
That is. So, listen, you want to go ahead and get into this? We can talk.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are interested. So you have two pieces here. You've got, and this all goes back to the CARES Act is what was recently passed. That's the buzzword everybody's talking about. So there's two pieces. There's the stimulus check that's going to be coming to the individuals. And then there's the PPP that you referred to. That's the Payroll Protection Program. That one's geared for businesses. It's mainly there to help cover payroll costs for the next 8 weeks to keep people off unemployment. So I thought we would just start by taking a look at the individual stimulus piece.
Yeah, I think that's most of our viewers. That's what is it? What have you done for me lately? Right. That's the where is this stand? Where do people? People are talking about that they're going to be just writing checks, putting them in the mail, or it's just going to go to a deposit. How much money are people stand to gain out of this?
And I can understand the confusion because the virus came and the pandemic happened and the situation was so fluid. Laws were passed very quickly, and then everybody was trying to interpret the law and get information out there. And I have seen a ton of fake news on this stuff. And so where we stand now on the individual stimulus payment, and I have some notes here I'll be looking down at, but it's going to cover. So we'll start with a single individual here. Anybody that files a single tax return and is $1,200 for the individual. Now the limitations come in. There's a phase out period amount that kicks in on your income. $75,000 is where that kicks in, and it's a step of 5. So as you have income greater than, I don't want to get too detailed here, but you have income greater than $75,000, it steps down in 5% brackets. But if you are a single filer and you have a tax return on file for 2018, since the deadline has been extended to file your 2019 tax return, that's the check is not dependent on your 19 tax return being filed. They will use the information that is on your 2018 tax return to determine the amount of your check. And we have had some clients that if we file their 19 tax return, they would have a piece of this stimulus phased out. So they're going to hold off and not file their tax return because their 18 numbers are below that 75,000 that I mentioned. So that may be something to think about. But if you have filed a tax return, number one, if you have a 2018 tax return on file, you don't have to do anything. Now, which would mean that on your 2018 tax return, if you had direct deposit information on there, you're going to get that stimulus check quicker because they're just going to zip it over into your bank account. Now, if you're like me, when I filed my tax return, I didn't put any kind of direct deposit information on it. If I owed money, I would just write a check with the voucher. And if I was due a refund, I would just sit back and wait for the check to come. So what I'm saying, you don't have to do anything. It may take a little while to get that check. So what the IRS, what they're working on, and they've been talking about this, and I have the website up here. They're going to have a portal where you can go and give them your direct deposit information to get that stimulus check faster. And I'm looking, it's still not up. I keep refreshing the page and I don't see the portal. So I don't know when that's going to come. So that's a single. That's if you're just a single individual. Married, if go ahead.
Clarify real quick. So we have to have a 2018 tax return, done, signed, sealed, delivered,
Yes.
filed. If we did a 19 already, are they looking at the 19 return?
Yeah, if there's a 19 on file, they're going to take the information off that. So if you did put some direct deposit information on your 19 tax return, they have that information and they'll use it.
So they're going to use whatever the most recent, tax return is, but at least have an 18. So if you haven't done a 2018, you better hurry up and get it done.
Correct.
So, okay. So that's individual. So, and that's the individual, that's the single guy, right? That's right. Me, I'm married, I've got some kids. So that's not me. I don't file single. I file, joint return, being married.
Okay. Getting into a joint return. So on a joint return, it's the $1,200 times 2 for the 2 adults. So that's $2,400. And then, and I left this out on the single tax return because obviously you could have children, dependents on a single tax return, but there's an additional $500 for each dependent. The kicker is they have to be 17 or younger. So they kind of blocked out this group of 17 to 24 that aren't going to get anything. And there's some discussion that they may come back in the fourth round and give those guys some money. But so if you're married, you're looking at $2,400 and then plus $500 a dependent that's 17 and under. Same rules apply with the tax return and direct deposit information. So the biggest unknown still is the time period here. Like I said, the website's not up to put your direct deposit information in. I have not heard that anyone has received a check as of today. Every day they hold a press conference and they say the money's coming, the money's coming. So that is still the unknown.
So what is that? That's what everybody keeps, and I think you've got to give me a little bit of preview before, we started, rolling tape today, but is it, the law's been passed, the money's there, it's sitting there, but somebody's got to write the rules, or I don't know if it's the rules or like the function, like, Congress put this together, said, okay, go do it, but somebody's got to stand there and say, somebody's got to do the work. And you've got people trying to figure logistically, how do we get this into people's bank accounts? How do we make sure that they don't get it twice, or who's going to disperse it? And it sounds like it's a mess.
Yes, and I know a lot of people haven't dealt with the IRS, but I deal with them a lot, and I'm sure everybody's heard stories that if you deal with the IRS and you don't dot your I or cross your T, and it's a nightmare to get anything done with them. So you could imagine this massive organization trying to get checks out, and Trump has given them a deadline, I believe, of 3 weeks. I don't know exactly the starting period of that 3 weeks, but you're right, to figure out, so single direct deposit information on file, who's going to get a check, who we don't want to send double checks. And I'll tell you the other mix that's in there is you have a ton of people like my parents who are retired and all they receive is Social Security. Now, those guys, if that's the only bit of income you have, you're not required to file a tax return. They have guaranteed these individuals that they're going to get a $1,200 stimulus check. So now you have a whole group of people that don't even file a tax return, who are you're going to send a check to. So what they have said, I believe, I don't know if it's 100%, but a high percentage of Social Security recipients receive that money through direct deposit. So they have come out and said that your stimulus money for Social Security recipients will be direct deposited into the same account they have on file for you. through Social Security Administration's office. So yes, you can see it's just a logistical nightmare. I see what Trump was trying to accomplish. We want to get money into the hands of individuals and then have that money out in the market. You
It's
know,
unprecedented as well, right? This has never been done before either.
if you remember under George Bush, I think there was like a $600 payment that was passed, and we all received $600 amounts, which they were not able to do that within a 3-week time frame. I forget how long it took them, but it was probably closer to like a 3-month from when the law was passed to money in people's hands. So that was done, and I don't remember exactly. I don't think they did direct deposit. I think all of that was checks or some kind of credit on a tax return. So this is a different ball game in what they're trying to do here, because everything here is time sensitive. The money needs to get into the economy. It needs to be spent in the economy to help out the small business. So whenever you put the speed, I think you can do anything. It's when you say do it in 2 weeks, do it in 3 weeks. That's where you start to see some hiccups. So, but no, I think people will start seeing the money. I think next week, definitely by the following week.
Okay. So you mentioned if you had children, how does that affect if you're under these thresholds, are you getting additional, money for the number of children you have, or is it just if you have children, you get some money?
It's $500 per child. So with a max of 4, now you put me on the spot. I think there may not be a max, 4 or 5 kids. I'm looking at some notes I have down here, and I don't have anything written on that. But it's 500, and like I said, as long as your dependent is 17 and under. So they kind of blocked out this group from 17 to 24, where the
college kids are on their own.
The college kids are on their own, which is really shocking, because you imagine if you put some money in a college kid's hands, they're going to go out and spend it at the local business. So there's talk.
They're not going to save it. They're going to definitely it's going to move.
There wouldn't be any saving, I doubt it. So there's some talk that in a 4th round, they want to bring that age group into the fold with some kind of payment to them. So I don't know. Yes.
So bright side.
Oh, the other thing, let me mention, it's not going to be taxable. So it will not be taxable income. So
that's
yes.
Very exciting. So good news for everyone out there is money's been approved. This process is pretty much we know the rules and how much. It's pretty, it's certain. So all the different things that everybody's hearing, we know it's $1,200 a person. Obviously when you get over 75,000 individually, you've got some stair step, and you can help if we can get them your information, along those lines. Sure. You can help them maybe. Jointly, it sounds like that would be 150,000. Maybe you go there if you're less. Yeah,
it's 150 for a married couple. That's correct.
So married, if we make less than 150,000 on a 2018 return, we can expect $2,400 to work its way to us here in the near future. And if we've got some kids, it just makes it even that much better. So the good news, money's there. Its process is pretty much it's there. We just need to make sure that we've got our tax returns done. We've got them submitted. Maybe check on our parents if they've got some Social Security there, to make sure if it's getting mailed. And then if this site does open up to where they're not having to wait for that check, it's probably going to be hard for a lot of our seniors maybe to necessarily navigate. It's hard for me to navigate the IRS's website, but if they're getting paper checks, this might be a time to say, hey, let's move you into a direct deposit.
And it's irs.gov/coronavirus is where the information is going to be. And that's where the link for the portal to upload your direct deposit information is going to show up.
Hopefully our tech guys will get them to how the kids do it on YouTube. We'll put a link down here.
Yes.
Kind of how they say it. So hopefully our production team can do that for us. What is jumping on the business side? I'm a business owner. What what is the PPP other than banks are flying around talking about it in short, what does that do for the business? And then what does it do for like it's going to affect individuals as well?
Yes. Okay. Okay. So the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, is a new lending facility that the Treasury Department has established. And the nice thing, what they did with this is they utilize the Small Business Administration and the local, national and the local banks that are FDIC insured, and most of them already have a relationship with the SBA. So this allowed them to get this program up and running. Once again, speed was key here. So to get the program up and running, this lending facility. And then what they wanted you to do is, as a business owner, they wanted you to utilize a bank that you already have your operating account with. So you already have this relationship with the bank. So the PPP program, what they're doing is they're taking a look at, and you have some options here. They want to know your average payroll costs, because once again, the key here is to get money to these businesses that have been closed, or businesses where their traffic has been reduced, and at one point in time they thought they were going to have to lay some individuals off. So what the point of the program was, let's get some money into the hands of these businesses, so when the economy is back up and running, these businesses can get back up and running, and not have to worry with finding new employees in the interview process and HR and whatnot. So what the options here, and I'll give you a high level review of it, is it's a very simple calculation. So on the application, it's a very simple application also. It's a 2-page application. I think some of the banks have tried to muck it up a little bit, but that's another discussion. But so it's a 2-page application, and once you calculate your average monthly payroll cost, you multiply that by 2.5, and that is your max loan amount. So it is a loan. It starts off as a loan. It's a 2-year loan. Originally, the loan was going to be at 0.5%. It is now 1% loans for any amount under $350,000. Once you go over that amount up to, I want to say 5 or 10 million may be the max. I think there's a step in the middle there. The interest rate drops back down to 0.5 point. But 90% of the loans, I imagine, are going to be up to this $350,000 mark. So that's it. And then you sign this. Of course, you attest to a few items about have you been disbarred? Are you felony charges? Are you a U.S. citizen? So you answer some of these basic questions, and then I equate this to like a signature loan. You attest to a few items, which talks about you're supplying this information. This is original documentation. It's accurate information. Just some basic items, but you never sign over any personal guarantee on this loan. There is no collateral that is needed to secure this loan, and there's no credit check for the loan. You have a authorized representative from the business sign the paperwork. So the U.S. Treasury Department, once again, speed was key here, wanted a loan program because the federal government is backing these loans. So the bank has very little risk on them. So I equate it to like a signature loan. Now, how do you come up with your average monthly payroll cost? Well, they allow you to go back to 2019, and you would look at the entire year of 2019, your payroll costs. And I don't want to get into the weeds here, but they talk about full-time equivalents. So you may have some part-time employees. That calculation is done on a 30-hour week, not a 40-hour week. So you take 30 hours times 52 weeks, and you come up with the hours to come up with 1 FTE, for your part-time employees. And that's some of the stuff that we can help businesses if they're applying for this loan. But roughly high level, so you look at your 2019 payroll cost. You can include items in there like your employer side of health insurance, the employer side of any kind of retirement payments into 401k, or a lot of people have simple retirement plans for their employees, some of the smaller businesses. And you add up those costs for the year, and then you divide it by 12, and you have your average monthly payroll cost.
And that gets multiplied by
2.5. Now, if you're a seasonal, I just worked on an application for a farmer. He's a seasonal type. They let you pick a different period in 2019. You don't have to do the entire year. They let you go from like March to June when you possibly wouldn't have some of your seasonal type employees there. And you're right. You come up with that average monthly payroll cost times 2.5, and there's your max loan amount. So up front, at first, I was giving advice and thinking this was going to be a very simple process, get in touch with your bank, and then the bank started sending out information that they needed to approve these loans. And I've seen some banks go as far as original charter documentation for the business, articles of incorporation, all W-2.
That's what I've heard from everyone, that it's every day it's a new document.
Yes.
We need this now, we need this now, we need this. Right. And I've even talked to some bankers where they've said it's just fluid, it keeps changing, we don't know. And so
the day that the lending facility opened, they had an application. The U.S. Treasury had the official application on their website. That morning they updated it with a new application, and by that afternoon I think there was a third copy of it. So from a CPA standpoint, it's very frustrating, because I would advise a business, they would go talk to the bank and then call me back and go, hey, you told me this, and the bank is saying this. So it became very difficult. But you have to realize the bank has to keep these loans on their books, even though they are guaranteed by the U.S. Treasury. They keep them on their books, and the banks have regulations like you wouldn't believe. So
banks have still got to follow. It's still a loan for them,
yes.
Even though it's moving at this speed. They're still regulatory. They've got to keep it, it affects, their business. And typically a bank, when you don't go to the bank and say, I want to borrow some money, and they immediately give it to you. You go through, and you go through review to make sure they've done what they need. But you've got the federal government pushing them, let's get these out. And they're just trying to make sure it's like, hey, we're going as fast as we can. But we've got to dot our I's, cross our T's, because we're still going to be, in 6 months, we're still going to have this, loan possibly on the books,
That's right. So, okay. So that's your application process. So you could see the some risk there with the banks and why they're kind of pushing applicants for some additional information to get comfortable with it. So what everybody wants to know, though, is that these loans are sold that they're a loan, but they will be converted to a grant, which means free money. So the requirement is, once you get the loan, and they want to process these very fastly. They want to get the loan in, get the documentation in, and that's why they wanted you to go to a bank you had a relationship with, because that bank is going to have your operating account, and they are going to direct deposit that money directly into your operating account. And the money is based on your payroll costs, so you can pay your employees. And even if you do send them home, you're still paying them. So when the market, the economy opens back up, you have your employees in line, and you can just get back to business. So the 0.5 of that, so it's 2.5 of your average monthly payroll cost. They want you to spend the other money on rent and utilities, two other main items to keep your business open: your employees, your rent, and your utilities. So when the economy opens, you've got your building, your lights are still on, and you can have your employees and get back to work. So you get the money, and what's going to happen is you're going to have 8 weeks to spend this money, and they want you to spend the money. You have 8 weeks to spend it. Now, if you spend it on the right items, not right items, but the items that are qualifying you to have that amount converted to a grant, that's what's going to happen. So if you spend it on your payroll cost, and the only caveat there is you cannot file. You have to keep that FTE number the same or more. So that's the item you report on the application, the FTE number. To make it simple, that's just your full-time employees equal one full-time employee equals one FTE. So you would count them up
So
on
we're
your
not taking the money and then letting
firing
employees go
people
and then just
or
putting them.
buying. You're not going to go buy a new stove or a new piece of equipment with this money. That's not what it's for. They're not going to forgive that. That's going to stay as a loan. You're going to have to pay that amount back. But if you spend it on your employees, on your payroll costs, their retirement, their health care benefits, utilities, the mortgage, or your rent for your building, that amount will be forgiven. And from my understanding, it will not be called cancellation of debt, which is taxable. From my understanding, it's going to be a grant that is not going to be taxable, which is also another bonus. So what
there's going to be some accounting to keep up with here.
Yeah. So
you're going to really, our business, you've really got to dot your I's, cross your T's on this. They're rushing so fast to get the money out. These rules keep changing. We might possibly have the money and the rules change after the fact. So you're going to need a partner, somebody there with you to really help you make sure that you've got all of this accounted.
And that's right. And they've actually already changed some of the rules, and some of the people that got approved up front, they have a clause to grandfather those people in, and they're going to, because originally they were giving you money for the employer side of the payroll tax, which was not originally intended, but they had loaned that out. And those people that got a loan early up front, they got that money, and they're going to allow those expenses to forgive that piece of the loan. But on a go forward, they said that cannot be part of your average monthly payroll costs. So you're right.
That's important what you just said there. I know one person who's actually gotten funded on one of these already last week.
So if in that individual's calculation, if they were approved for the employer side of the FICA, is what we call it, the employee, the payroll taxes, and they're in that period, they tell you what period. If they're in that period, then they will allow that expense to forgive that piece of the loan. So yes, there's going to be some things
in the weeds. This can get really in the weeds for employers, their CPAs, their bankers. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Right.
But for the average Joe, what he can take out of this is good news. Your employers, and I believe most of them all are working tirelessly. They're at home, they're back and forth to the office, they're working with CPAs, they're talking to their banks. They're getting this. If you hear them talk, or if you ask the question, hey, where do we stand? Are we doing, the PPP program? That's something that maybe, you're not necessarily getting into the details with the business owner, but just to know that your business owners, they're fighting, for you, for their business. And that's going to mean that there is going to be money there. That it's your job is safe. It's more money. It's not, the PPP doesn't give money to the individual, but it goes to the business, and the business is being directly told this needs to go to payroll.
Yes.
Keep your payrolls, full. Keep everyone there, even though they're not working. We're wanting you to push that money out. So indirectly,
and they sell this as a program for Main Street is what they call it, versus like Wall Street, big, because you're limited to no more than 500 employees. So it's really a Main Street type lending facility here. So to cap that off real quick, it's 8 weeks. You have 8 weeks to spend the money. Documentation. You are going to have to document this. So if you spend money on the 401k or the simple retirement piece, you're going to want to have documentation for that. If you, if you spend money on your rent, utilities, you're going to want to have documentation of the checks and the invoices. On the payroll side, I don't know exactly how far they're going to go. If it's just going to be a simple payroll register, if it's going to be copies of the 941s, that's the unknown. So, and the other key is, if a piece of this money of the loan is not forgiven, there is no prepayment penalties. So what I've been telling clients is, let's get the money. Let's spend it on the payroll. Let's wait till the 8 weeks are up and get back with the bank and see what piece is going to be forgiven. And if we have any problem, we'll just pay back the amount that's not forgiven. This is not a loan to line your pocket, or not even just line your pockets, but to go out and buy new equipment. That I can tell you 100% will not qualify for forgiveness.
Right. This is strictly help, keeping people their jobs, keeping the business. So when we get to the other side of this, and I know we will, business will be there. It's one thing for if this program wasn't there, and as business owners, we're trying to figure out how to keep our employees and get everybody there. And then once we can go back out to work, well, it's the kind of the chicken or the egg, right? Yeah. Once we all can go back to the office and work, well, we're still needing to pay people, but we haven't, produced our products. We haven't provided our services yet, and people haven't paid us. So it turns into a real problem. Yeah. But with this, our electricity is still on. The air conditioner is still running at the office. The employees are fed. They've gotten their checks. Everybody can kind of come back to work, and we're not as much in this cash crunch where we're all, having to make really bad decisions because what we're going to do. This sounds like this will help us where it's what it's for. Don't go buy that, new tractor. Don't go buy, the refrigerator. Don't do those things. Just
even if you had some repair and maintenance around your office, if you had an AC unit or something, I would not spend the money on that unless if you felt the 1% for a 2-year loan was a good rate on some money, then maybe do that stuff with the understanding that you now have a loan at 1% for 2 years. So, and some people that may work for some people. So,
yeah, and I think I would at least urge people, this is not the time to go borrow money to do those types of things. This is really keep it for the employees, do what you need to, work work with your banker, work with your CPA. There's going to be a lot of money coming into the economy, save if you can, once we get to the other side of those things, go get loans in typical manner. Don't use this. You don't want to, they're loaning this money out in a way that we don't know 100% of the rules yet. And that's where, for a business owner, so we've got to be real careful. You don't want to get in a situation where they maybe say that it's immediately due, or maybe they say that no, if you use it for absolute, if you go repair your, building or do an add-on with it, they're not even going to loan. They might demand that money back. So we don't know all those things, right?
And actually, there's some language in there, and I don't know how far they're going to push it, but I think if you spend this money outside of some of those payroll and rent and utility type items, there may be a penalty involved if they felt there was some fraud in there. Now, I don't know how they're going to stretch that, but they, excuse me, they gave themselves some wiggle room to, I guess, deter people from doing that. So,
yeah, there's always, the last thing we need is you want the federal government coming down on you. This is, do your payrolls, find some other ways to do it. But it sounds like at the end of the day, people need to be utilizing the programs, working with a CPA that can help them, cross and navigate this, because there's going to be reporting requirements. This isn't just here's some money. The individual money that we've talked about, a stimulus, they're sending that to you. Do what you need to do with it. That's kind of just free money. This very well is going to need documentation. There's going to come back. You're going to take this money. You're going to spend it. Unless you're wanting to be that guy in your business that's filling out the reporting paperwork and accountability and all that stuff, do it. But you're more than likely going to probably want a CPA that's going to be able to stay on top of this as the rules change, for you.
And I think to kind of we can probably end it here with this piece. One thing I didn't mention, you have a ton of businesses out there. Everything that I talked about dealt with a business that has payroll, where you have a payroll registered, W-2s, the 941s. There is a big business, your plumber that comes to your house, maybe what the U.S. Treasury for this lending program is deemed a independent contractor. It's just him working. He has no payroll. So this program is designed to help this guy. They broke it into two different windows. This first window that's open that they're taking applications for are for your businesses that have a payroll, where you have the 941s and you run a payroll and you send W-2s. There's going to be another window that opens. It was supposed to be today. I have not seen any information about it. I think they kind of got ahead of their skis on this one. It may be sometime next week. But you have this whole other group. Think of your Uber driver, your plumber,
HVAC repair guy,
those
type. Your trades. Right?
Yes, they do not have a payroll. And in addition to this, think of your partnerships, because partners in a partnership are not on payroll. They take what I don't want to get in the weeds, but they don't take a payroll check. They get distributions. Mm-hmm. Now there's been some discussion that, and I'll tell you, like here at the firm here, it's a partnership. We have 4 partners and then we have employees on staff here. We filed a claim for our payroll, and then you have the partners who are not included in that amount of money, but are still relying on the revenue from the partnership to pay themselves. It's just not called payroll. We believe the language is somewhat murky, that these partners in these partnerships are going to be in this second phase where you're independent contractors. And there's going to be a whole new set of guidelines for your independent contractors. I've even heard some talk where these guys may have to actually go into the bank because they don't have that payroll register to show you how they spent the money. Because an independent contractor just takes money out of the business as the business makes money, and it's documented in a totally different manner. So I think we can leave that because I don't have much on that. Not many people have much on that. It's the unknown. But it is out there. They're not scoped out of it. They're not left out. We believe
they're just affecting the largest group first, right?
Yes.
Which would be the employees. Yeah. Let's tackle them. Let's get money to the individuals. We've got that coming. Let's get money into the businesses to cover the payrolls. Now we're going to come back, and then work on those partnerships, those self-employed.
The gig workers is kind of the buzzword they've been calling them.
Gotcha.
So
well, I think why don't we let's see if we can get some more information on that in the next week or so. Maybe we can jump on. We'd love to have you back on again and give us an update of what that looks like. I think we're bumping up on time here. So with that, I would say thank you. It's a lot easier, I believe, to get information in this format, to people rather than getting a 2-minute, headline on the news or having to sit and read through long, boring articles. Just getting straight down to it. That's what we try to do here. What's what, BR. That's how we're going to get information out. So if you've got something new coming out, or shoot us, give me a call, shoot a line. We'll jump back on. We do short format, whatever we need to do to actually get this information into people's hands, in a consumable format. So we appreciate that. Again, everybody, this is Jonathan Clark, manager at LA Champagne, what we now know is the oldest CPA firm.
That's right.
Here. 100 years they've been doing it. So if you're looking for a CPA, definitely reach out over there. They can help you with this. If you don't have one, I'd recommend them. Let's see what happens. Everybody stay safe out there, and we'll call it a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Not a problem.